Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to continue working on our hungry dragon. First up, we're going to change a little bit of the wings. I'm going to rework and add in a little bit more detail there, and from there we're going to continue on coloring and adding in texture detail. Like I said, first up the wings. You can see me actually moving around, setting up the brushes and making sure that the Zbrush is actually reacting and working the way I want it to go. And you can really see that I'm now starting with just a regular clay tubes brush, going around wings themselves and actually making sure that there's some kind of an indentation, and that'll give the feeling like the wing is really connected there, and that's that there's like a skin membrane actually tearing at that space. You could also see that I've hidden all the other subtools except for the body and the wing membrane, and that's just to make it sure that the computer can actually handle this amount of detail, because we're working at the highest subdivision level here. That's also the reason why I don't actually need to do any topologizing or anything. That's just because I know there's a lot of detail there, and this will be seen from like a very great distance compared to the rest of the model, so a little bit of tearing there wouldn't really hurt. And now, well, first up you can also see, because this is created with the C-sphere modeling, they're actually they're like normal tubes is created there, and I'm now breaking up the shape and making sure they're more rounded shapes, more less like the tubes that were before and more like an organic shape. This is all done with symmetry, so if I change one thing at one side, it will automatically be done at the other side, and that's just to save me time, because later on when I'm posing the model, I'm gonna change that, and I'll actually make sure that there won't be any visible, well, there will be visible difference. The second part is actually choosing my colors, and I'm using this sphere here actually to paint some colors on, so I can actually use the color picker that's a C on the keyboard when hovering over anything but the mouse. To actually select a certain color and use that color on my model. And you can see me actually now painting on the inside of the mouth, but I'm also going over like skin detail, places where I think that the underlying layer of skin will actually push through and make it a more pinkish blush color. For instance, here where the back ridge, like the rock texture stuff really pokes through, that's the place where I want this, and also here around the wings, or where the wing membrane will be eventually. And you can also see me painting in the insides of those places, even though I'm pretty sure those won't be visible. By making them a little bit more of a pinkish blush, I'm actually making sure that if I move some parts around, that you can still see like the details there, and there won't be like a basic color. There will be actually like more of a skin color, which would be more realistic. And also here, what I'm actually looking for is places that would be higher up, like, or where there would be a bone structure or very skin folded place underneath, and that's the place where I want to have that pink color. You can see that I wasn't doing the scars yet, and that's something I'm going to do now. So really the inside of the scars has now got a second layer, and that's really pushing the colors through this model and making sure that it looks a little bit more yeah, well, like a flesh wound, which it of course is. And I'm using this sensitivity with the Wacom tablet, and that really pushes the color through, so makes it more intense, and that's what I want in the scars here. And it's another thing here, I just did a save, and after that it froze the system, but it's the lucky thing for the saver, I can actually recover most of the work I did, and you can even see that the coloring is still done, so just luck on my side for this once. And that's also the reason why I'm hiding all the other subtools, because I know that there, and that might be nice for a reference, but for me to have a stabler-ish system would be way more preferred than having to see everything at all the time. Moving on to the model itself, you can see me here adding the color to the wing. I've also gone to the highest subdivision and lower subdivision on the model itself, but a higher subdivision on the wing. And that's what I'm using actually to add the color, because once again we're using polypaint, and polypaint is always dependent on the amount of detail in the model. So by subdividing the wings, I can actually add more color detail. And later on we will copy all those color details back to the UV map and use that UV map with the color details for the rendering. You can actually see that I'm using a darker color for the places where the wing membranes will be intersecting, and that's just because I know that's where the shade will be, so that's eventually where the darker colors should line up. I'm also hiding several parts of the body here and just making sure that for me it's more accessible. If I'm not mistaken, we're now going to work on the ridge. Let's see if I was correct. You can really see as we're editing in the darker color, and that's actually to making sure that the separation line between where the model, where the rock-like texture pokes through and where the skin is more obviously and more visible, and that'll make it a more readable model. That's a very important part, making sure that everybody can see what every part on your model is. So if it's either in this case, it's like a more of a rock bone texture compared to like skin folds. And later on, right now, we're going to go over the skin here with the pink color, and that'll actually make sure that it looks like the skin is more folded up and more pushed out, like there's a bit of a tension on there. And just to make it a more believable model, of course. We're also going to go around the legs here, just to be sure that everything here is well visible, and everything here is like the lower parts are a little bit darker, higher parts are a little bit lighter. Just like when we did a startup shot. And now we're moving on to the rest of the model and actually the spikes here, and we're going actually to make the insides darker and then the outsides a little bit lighter. And we're also going to add a little bit of pink to the chopped off pieces. We're going to get there a little bit later, and that'll actually make sure that it looks like the skin, like there's more of a flesh texture inside of it. I'm also doing this without symmetry, so first the one side and then the other side, even though these are completely symmetrical at this moment, apart of course for the details. And that's just to give some more variety, because I know those claws and spikes will be more in the front of the render eventually. I'm here just selecting the colors for the claws I made, so we can later on go back to the same colors. Now I'm picking a more of a white-ish color, and that's in rendering this there will be a little reflective map on here, and that the reflective map will be more bright at these white spots. That's actually for me to make it easier to select and to manipulate the texture later on. After the claws are all done, the spikes then you can see now this is the part with the red more skin texture we're going to add in. And you can really see me adding in the detail, and then I saw that it was a little bit too bright, so I toned it down with a little bit of the white color, a little bit of the darker gray color, and that's just to make sure that it all blends together well. And the tongue here is a little bit faster. We're just going to pick a really dark color to add the darker spots, and then a light, very bright reddish color to go over that and actually make a difference between the higher and the lower parts. And after that we're going to do a little bit more on the down side here, and it's just because when I saw the model from a distance I thought my darkest color was actually still too bright on this model. And I knew that there will be like a darker material on there anyway, so it would still be dark enough, but just to be sure that it won't be like a shiny red object, we're going to tone everything down. That's what I just did here. And now the same part for the teeth. I'm going to go with like a darker color at the bottom side and then a brighter color on top. And I'm now actually choosing like a more of a yellowish tone or more of a white tone. I'm actually just testing and seeing what I would like how the model reads. So if I'm not mistaken, after I've done all the teeth, I'm going to look at the full model and then realize that it's not exactly the way I wanted it. One thing to keep in mind is that I'm doing this really fast, so I'm just literally just touching up the teeth a little bit, and that's actually more than enough because they will be of course in the foreground, but it won't be that visible and it will be a lot smaller. So now you can actually see me comparing the color to the rest of the model. And then I'm just testing with a darker color to see how it would look. Just going around all those teeth, top and bottom of course. And one easy thing I do here, and that's like in a few seconds, I'm going to use the fill object function of Zbrush with the color, and that's an easy way for me to actually add more saturation. You can see it turning way more yellow. What I actually did was just fill the object with like a 10 or a 15% yellow and then repeated that a few times. And after that I used Ctrl-C to go back to a less yellowish tone, and there's like an overall effect that I'm adding there. And after that we're going to add in the pink color of the model itself and the mouth there. And that's just to emphasize the fact that it's a soft tissue here, and that's where the teeth really come out. And after the last part here, I can see that the inside of the mouth is actually way too bright and way too green, and that's actually that's just why I'm adding more of a red color, really blending it all together. Well, for now I would say thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.